Welcome, Kim, to the Vulnerable Voices podcast with your host, me, Nisha Mystery. I'm super excited to have you on today. All things kindness with a little bit of anxiety, how you deal with that, some of your life experience, your career experience. And I'm so excited just to unravel all the amazing things that you've been up to, get a bit vulnerable, talk about, your own childhood experiences, mental health, and how all of your experiences have now led you to where you are, to helping so many amazing people through the amazing work that you're doing. I cannot wait to have this chat with you. So thank you so much for coming on. And why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me on. So I am Kim Stokes, founder of Kindness for Success, coaching and consulting. I work predominantly with overwhelmed working mums, and I work on a couple of philosophies. The first being around flipping the notion of having it all to defining and living your all. So success based on, your terms, not anyone else's, or what the 10-year-old version of you perhaps thought success was. And the other is that we do that through extending ourselves kindness in the same way that we do to others. So self-kindness becomes the enabler. And I guess outside of that, more importantly, I should have said, is I am married, mum of two. So I've got, my son is 10 and my daughter is 7. And Kindness for Success is something that, well, it will be 2 years next month, scarily. And prior to that, I had a long career in the wonderful world of HR. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. I think 2 years, firstly, we're going to celebrate that because I think it's incredible. Time flies, doesn't it, when you're doing something for yourself? But I
Yeah.
think one thing that also we connect on is our background in HR and that experience in the corporate world. Did you always know that that's something you wanted to work in or explore as a people-orientated person? Was that something that was encouraged, or did you kind of fall into that, as they say?
Yeah, do you know, it's a funny one, Nisha. So when I was growing up, I always thought I would be a primary school teacher. And I don't really know, I mean, my parents weren't teachers. Perhaps it was from, some of the teachers and role models I guess I had growing up. So that was always my plan. And then I remember it came to going to university, and I was chatting with a friend's older brother who was already at university, and I think was the only person that I knew. So, then you're like, oh, wow, like, you're the font of all knowledge. And I remember him saying, oh, if you go and do sort of 4 years teaching degree at university and decide later down the line that you'd like to do something else, then you're sort of, perhaps limited. He was like, you could always do a degree, an undergraduate degree, 3 years, and then convert it through a PGCE. So I was like, that's a great idea. So I went off to Manchester, and I studied sociology and criminology, just because they sounded really interesting. I also fell in love with Manchester, and yeah, I'd always been sort of fascinated with people, and some people might say a little bit nosy. So it was whilst I was there that I guess I retained this thirst, I guess, to do the teaching. So I did do a PGCE afterwards and qualified as a primary teacher, but for various reasons, which we may or may not come to, decided that no, that wasn't going to be the path for me. And then I guess I'd never seen myself in the business world, but actually I ended up having a temp job somewhere and was like, oh, there's this like whole people thing in business, and like, oh, maybe that could be something. And yeah, it sort of went from there. So yes, always in the people space, but a bit meandery, as so many stories are.
I know, no career is linear, isn't it? And it's
No.
always like you're always figuring it out. You're always testing and trialing something new. And ultimately, it comes down to what you naturally enjoy and maybe naturally good at. And so, social skills, communities, people, it seems like it's very like a strong skill of yours. And I could tell that from the first conversation we had. And I see you posting and, you care for people, and you have to have a level of care to do what you do as well. What was it like growing up for you in like social circles and people and like friends? And, the influences you had around you, what was that like in shaping who you were?
Yeah, so I guess I would say I had a very well, I guess to me, a typical upbringing, but I guess, we always think it's typical, don't we? Because it's what sort of we experience until we get more socialized. But yeah, I grew up my mum and dad and my sister who is, well, she's 4.5 years younger. And yeah, I remember, I guess again, it was probably typical for that generationally that my dad was the one that sort of, went out and earned the money, so to speak. And then my mum, she worked, but she didn't go back to work until my sister was at school. So I was sort of probably nine. And then she talks about having, a job versus a career. She used to work, I think like 10 till 2 all times. So she would always take us to school and pick us up. And I remember we'd always come home and sit at the little breakfast bar and have a warm drink. I always had orange. My sister always had blackcurrant, and then I'd have a packet of Milky. No, my sister would have Milky Bar buttons. I'd have Cadbury's buttons. Yeah, tell her about our day, and yeah. So it was yeah, as I said, fairly um typical um upbringing, going to the park at the weekend on our bikes, being up with friends. Um, yeah.
No, I love that. And I love the little memory to the little sweets or chocolate or those kind of things that bring you a little sense of joy, isn't it? And it's so specific to literally honing down on this is what I was having and I remember it vividly, the orange
Yeah.
juice. And I love it. It's being a child again. My question to you is, do you still enjoy that now? Is it something that brings back that sort of memory when you pick up that chocolate or
Do you know, it's funny, I'd never thought about it like that, but I've actually got like a look, I've got it. I mean, it's not hot orange. It's ginger, spice ginger, I think this one is. Um, but yeah, it even little things like in my house with the kids, we always still have those little, because I remember there was a drawer in our house in the fridge that we'd have like the little mini chocolates or whatever, and we've always got a snack box with chocolates in our house. Although my children are like, oh, keep it away from mummy, because it never, it never lasts when I go there. But yes, and little things like we've even got. It's funny the things that come up, isn't it? But I've got a crystal bowl. It's probably intended to be a fruit bowl that what belonged to my granny, and she lived in Guernsey in the Channel Islands. And whenever we would go over, there was in it sort of fruit pastels, which my sister liked, and then Cadbury's flakes for me. And I've now got that, in sort of my house, and my kids know, oh, that was the sweet bowl when you were at Granny's. Although I'm realizing all my memories so far, Nisha, are around sweets and chocolate.
Oh, we
Mhm.
do when we're kids, though, isn't it? That's our fun memory. It's the little treats that, when we grow up, we're allowed to have, and it's embracing, oh, your kids, go and have it, enjoy it. But actually, sometimes bring it back
Yeah.
when you're an adult. It's that emotional memory that gets stored. That you're like, oh, fruit pastels, the little tubes, and it's all crystallized with sugar on the outside. It was so terrible, but it
Yeah.
was so nice when you had it. So I love that. You're still
Yeah.
embracing that inner child part of you and keeping that memory. What with those comforts and things, obviously, I sometimes find I needed them during like stressful periods, or it gave me a sense of comfort or safety as well. I know you mentioned this before and how much you feel comfortable sharing in terms of like anxiety growing up and your level of sort of anxiousness in certain dynamics. Talk to me about your experience with anxiety, because I'm sure a lot of people can resonate with that.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think it's, I think it's always good where possible, where people feel comfortable to talk about these things, because it further normalizes it. And, if it can make one person feel, oh, okay, it's not just me, that's a good thing. And I guess when I talk about my anxiety, I guess the point, Nisha, I guess that I really can recall it most starkly from is, well, over 20 years ago now, but in my early years. Mhm. But it's interesting, and we can come to that, but I think as I reflect back, and as I was, ahead of us talking, it perhaps was present before, but I just didn't have maybe the language for it, the awareness. Perhaps my parents didn't, because it was, it sort of wasn't talked as widely about as as it is now. And if anything to do with sort of mental health was where you had to be, you were clinically depressed, and it was huge things. But I so again, I'm not saying that this is rare, or sadly, it's fairly commonplace, but I experienced bullying in primary school. And there was a particular individual who I'd sort of moved schools, and as I look back now, this individual was very controlling and didn't like me playing with other people, would do
Mm.
things to belittle me. But when you sort of, and I guess I would really want to please this, individual. And I would go in
Mm.
to school being like, oh, are we going to be friends today? Or are they going to be, I've done like, oh, then you think, oh, I've done something. And so, perhaps some of that stems from that. And I can remember in the end, I got moved classes because I was having quite a chunk of time, I guess, off school with, tummy aches and headaches and these sorts of things. And I remember my mom taking me to the doctors, and them, I guess, assessing that actually physically there wasn't anything wrong with me, and them asking, oh, is there anything going on at school?
Mm.
Um, and sort of that's where it's, that's sort of where it came out. And then, yeah, I think it's one of those, who knows, but I think certainly from, I am still a massive people pleaser. And again, probably, this is certainly not unique to me, and I recognize it in a lot of my clients as well, that the thought of someone not liking me, is really a struggle with that. And when I sort of look beneath that, it's sort of the validation, I think, that I'm needing. And I think things that happen from our formative years and things can play a part in that. Am I suggesting that period in my life sort of set the path for, I guess, the anxiety that I have, I guess, lived with and continue to live with? No, but perhaps there is something that has, I guess, played a part in where that sits today, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you for being so brave and sharing that, because those experiences, they do affect you even late years later when you're sharing them. That same nervousness or the same feelings can come up. So just wanted to acknowledge how brave you've been, because I know exactly what that feels like. I was also bullied myself. So when you do talk about it, you do feel a bit like almost like you're reliving it. So just wanted to acknowledge that
Thank
that you've
you.
been incredibly brave. Did you ever feel like the teachers or any students around you were supportive, had noticed, how you were feeling? Or because I felt quite isolated, and I often used to try and go outside of the classroom to talk to teachers one on one to try and make them aware.
Mhm.
When you were experiencing that on an almost daily basis, did you feel supported enough, and or did you feel quite isolated in that whole experience?
I think as I reflect back now, I guess I more withdrew, and it was more like this individual it was more important what they thought than the teachers. And I remember one day I'd been sort of moved sets, where like for maths, and I'd been, so I had to go into a different classroom, and I was going to be in the separate place, this individual. And I remember them saying, no, don't, like, I want us to stay in the same,
Mm.
set, so don't go into the other room. So I was like, okay. And it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but God, I was younger than I think my son is now.
Mm.
And I remember being like, oh, okay. And then so we sat through the maths lesson, and I guess I thought I'd got away with it. And then at the end of the lesson, I remember my teacher saying, like, when we went back into our forms, it's like, where were you for maths? And I was like, oh, and I can remember I just like pointed, and she was like, where should you have been? And I was like, here. And she was like, and then she shouted, no, where should you have been? And I pointed to the other classroom. So no, that's a very vivid memory. And yeah, I sort of, I feel sorry for myself when or my 8-year-old self, or however I was then, because I can literally remember doing the pointing and not talking. And I think as well, it's, you know, whilst it's, I'm not saying I'm that old, and that was when it wasn't uncommon for teachers to shout, so it's not, that wouldn't happen, in the same way in a classroom now. And it would be like, oh, let's talk, but like, why did you not go in there? And how are you, all of those sorts of things, which is obviously much better. But I guess on face value, I was just not doing what I was told, where, obviously it was a lot more complex than that, which I guess, yes, it took getting to the point where my mum, was going into school and being like, that this is happening and I want her to be moved classes, and, all of those sorts of things. So
Yeah.
perhaps, and again, I was moved classes, and I remember, yeah, sort of flourishing and things, after that. So I think the support was there, but I guess I wasn't strong enough to seek it. And I guess there wasn't I don't know, maybe curiosity and understanding that perhaps there is from a more, I guess, emotional and pastoral point of view that perhaps there is now with teachers.
Yeah, but you were only doing what felt right in those moments, in that time period as well, right? So being
Yeah,
yelled at by teachers was normal. No one ever questioned it. We didn't have any sight over what could be different. You just kind of went with it. And being so young as well, you just kind of do. You're still learning day to day, trying to navigate. But I guess the feelings and the anxiety stays, doesn't it? Every day you're sort of nervous to go back into similar situations. And then also trying to navigate one, your own feeling, and trying to also settle that too at the same time. So you're almost juggling the two kind of worlds almost with this particular person as well as what felt right for you. And then you're kind of flip flopping. That's where the people pleasing comes, because you're trying to keep yourself safe and make sure you're not feeling
yeah.
those feelings. Um, which I think is not easy, and I know exactly how you feel in that situation. It's one of the hardest things, but that's what develops you, and that's what it's the psychological development of the anxiety and then on people pleasing. We want to fit in, we want to be part of something, we want to be liked, and it's a primal thing for us. And I was talking about this the other day and on another episode, it's a primal thing. If you don't fit in, then you're rejected. And if you want to build communities, you have to be a certain way to be liked, and if you don't, you're excluded from that. And at school, all you want to do is fit in, have
Yeah.
friends, get along with everyone. And then as you were sort of growing up and things like that in different years and sort of moving around, did that sort of ease slightly? Did they sort of get removed a bit more? Were you experiencing that with as you were getting older in school years?
Yeah, I guess I guess the individual that I was speaking about, sort of went to different schools, all of those sorts of things. So I guess there wasn't that. I guess what was a common thread as I sort of moved through, and in other friendships, and probably moving on to boyfriends and things, there was definitely a strong element of people pleasing, and perhaps not feeling fully confident in, um, you know I guess decisions that were mine to make, or ways to go, but I guess not to the same extent. um,
Mm.
and I think it's Yeah, I think part of it is, when you're growing up, and particularly, those early years in secondary school, you still are very much, working out so much about yourself, and you've got, all the hormones thrown in, and then, you've got the expectations of like, oh, should I, you know, should I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or should I be, or am I going to be popular because I'm not good at netball, or there's so much going on, isn't there? So I think I think there's a lot of people begin to, even if they haven't before, maybe like second guess themselves. And you can sort of, it's like it's always sort of called out in high school American movies, isn't it? Where you've got like, you've got the cool gang, and you've got the geeks, and then you've got do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like, it's awful. But then you're like, oh God, and I wouldn't go back to secondary school, because I think it's sort of a bit of a melting pot, isn't it? Of all sorts. But yeah, slightly scary because my son will be starting, next year, and I'm like, oh no.
I was gonna ask you about that actually, and I think maybe now sort of the right time to sort of include this. But you now as a parent and seeing your children grow up and going through the same ages and school years and all the expectations or things that might come up. How has it been on this side as a parent? You also are you extra protective? Have you got the knowledge to be like, this might come up, or do you just kind of roll with it as a parent as things come up? Like, how are you navigating parenthood with children of this age at similar school
Yeah,
years?
good question. And I think I think my husband and I, fortunately, we've always, since sort of having our first, over 10 years ago now, always been on a similar page, and that is to roll with it. So we were never, from the get-go, for us it was like, oh, okay, well, we've never had a newborn before, and okay, oh, think he's hungry, oh, sort of just that worked for us. We were not,
Mhm.
you know I had some friends that, for them, what really worked was, reading all the books and being like, oh, okay, these are the stages that, or we might get sleep regression here, we might get. Whereas for me, that sort of added sort of level of pressure and expectation, and it was sort of a like, well, let's sort of trust our instincts. And I feel like actually that was something that worked really, really well for us in early parenthood. And I feel that it's it served us well. We're now, I guess, like I say, so 10 and 7, still obviously relatively young, but we're finding that there's, of course, as they age, it's, different when they're a newborn, you think, oh, are they going to ever sleep? And then you start weaning, and then, oh, are they going to eat? And then, or are they going to settle at nursery? That, there's, of course, it all stages and all changes, but I think it just gets more, like, already I'm noticing that particularly my 10-year-old doesn't, need me sort of on a physical, practical level,
Mm.
as much. And schools saying that after Easter they can start walking to school on their own if parents
Oh.
are comfortable. And but it's more the emotional side, whether it's friendship fallings out, or whether, or I, you know, for me, particularly mum of a boy, and I don't want to be stereotypical, but it's sometimes hard to get him sharing things, or it
Yeah.
has to be in the right. Yeah, we have to sort of sometimes tease it out of him a bit, and he'll come, and maybe it'll seem like he's in a bad mood or whatever, but actually he's upset because something
Mm.
someone has said, or something that's happened. But on the surface you could look like, oh great, oh, here we go, teen years, moodiness coming through already. So yeah, I feel it's now actually more than in the earlier stages, is where, like, oh well, yeah, haven't parented someone through, you know, all the hormonal changes and that he's going to be going through, and going to secondary. And I feel there's sort of, the stakes are, it feels like the stakes are higher. So yeah, we're sort of, cognizant of, if we feel it will benefit them, for us getting some, support, whether that's, books, whether that's webinars, whether that's communities, then, I think that, there's so many great things out there that can support parents. And I think it's, yeah, Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent now.
No, I love it because actually it's like you're creating your own sort of mini manual almost with all the knowledge and little tools that you can have. And if it works for you, great. If it doesn't, and there's something else you can try. And sometimes people wish they had a manual given to them and you can go, right, cool, I can refer to this little handbook and it'll get me through. But I think you're doing the right thing by following your intuition and your gut. And as a as a pairing of you and your partner and, now your family, is you're working with each other, you're communicating. And that's where communities like this really help in terms of sharing your life experience, your knowledge, because that's what will be passed down. That's what people can learn off of, or you can teach someone something as well that they have no awareness of. And I think that's the key is being open-minded and following your gut, because everyone's journey in parenthood and relationships and friendships growing up is unique to them. And so I think you're doing the right thing in terms of your gut instinct, and no one can really dictate how you choose to parent. That's up to you. That's your decision. How have you found the connection between you and your son when you have had that space where he's able to share what's going on? Like, how is that for you as a parent, especially because I know boys tend to find it a little bit more difficult to open up naturally. Women do, and girls do. And you come home and you go, "Oh, this is what happened to me today." Or you talk to your girlfriends, and how has that been for you navigating with your son and communication and the connection that you guys have?
Yeah, do you know, I really value it when it happens. And I would say that it's it's probably less frequent now, but when there is something, it's deeper. Um, and it's, I guess, what I'm learning, Nisha, is that as we all are, he is a different person to me. So like, for example, if I go and pick him up or he comes home from football, whatever it is, and he's in a foul mood
Well,
and see me, really like, not being very nice to his sister or to us or whatever, I know now that, okay, well, that's his, something has upset him, but that's his
well,
sort of, defense. And if what I need in those situations is I want someone to, oh my goodness, what's happened? What's wrong? And, it almost invitates you to talk. Whereas I need to just leave him. Um, and I sort of struggle with that, or I'm
yeah.
sort of getting better. And then I know that he often it's, and again, I'm sure it's, yeah, a lot of people relate. It will be when, you're knackered at the end of the day, your dinner's almost ready, you're going to give him a kiss goodnight or something. And then it will be like, Mummy, you know, can I tell you something?
Oh,
And yeah, so I think for me, it's, I have to realize again, and also, so sometimes he will then share things, and it's more, I also have to try not to jump into rescuer, fix it mode, and actually just and listen, which again is, I think, well, as a parent, you just want to make everything right. And I think when they're two and they fall over and cut their knee, and well, yeah, you just give them a Paw Patrol plaster and a hug, and you have fixed it all, for them. Um, so I think, when he does share things, um, I try and make a point to sort of, thank him for, acknowledging that it's not always easy to, um, some yeah, sometimes we just bury things, isn't it? So actually, I try and not reward him, that's not the right phrase, but just, yeah, acknowledge that, he shared, and that there's nothing that he ever can't share, with us. And but yeah, I do fear that it will get um tougher, because yeah, and also he's more, even like, look at I'm an open book. My husband is not, until you really get to know him. And our son's like that, and then I think you add on sort of teenage years, and then So, but, I guess again, it's, well, we just do, you do what you can do.
I think it's great though, because it's creating that level of safety that people can come to you when they're ready. And I think that's what it is your experience to then go, actually, I know I can speak to my mum and dad. It's just I'm not quite ready yet. Or a lot of people often feel like they're going to be judged and shamed or criticized for something, or even blamed for something that might not be their fault. Often something happens at school. It's like, what did you do? And you're like, wait, like, don't go in with that first because
Yeah.
actually it's scary enough to share what's going on, let alone then having the fear that you're the one in the wrong. Actually, sometimes all we need is a venting space. And I think
Yeah.
you're doing that really well by giving that space and learning that you're not there to go in and swoop and fix, which you do. You're protective, of course. You want to take away all the stuff that makes them feel rubbish or anyone that makes them feel rubbish. And you go, right, we're going to deal with this person, or we're going to deal with this. But do you know what? Hats off to you and any parent out there. I think you're just going with what feels right, and they will appreciate that 100%. And so, yeah, I just want to celebrate you as parents because it's not an easy job. And I'm sitting here not with a child. So I just want to acknowledge how amazing of a job that you are doing. So well done.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you would always. Yeah, we had a few crosswords this morning, but I think, again, that's part of it. Like, it's no one is a perfect parent, because that doesn't exist.
Mm.
But I think it's those. I think, schools now as well. Yes, there's a long way to go, but I think, I guess, so the school that my children are at, for example, they're partnered with a organization called Paths, like promoting alternative thinking habits. And even from reception, they do, like, they talk about how, all emotions are, it's okay to feel all emotions, and it's
Mm.
but how we choose to respond to them. So I think, even like sometimes the things they'll, even my 7-year-old will come out with, I'm like, what? How, and they'll be like, oh, I just need a bit of, my 7-year-old at the weekend, she was like, she just sat and did this. I was like,
I love it.
what are you doing? She was like, I'm just meditating. I'm like, okay, cool. So yeah, I think there's, much greater awareness, and also with, um, you know, with neurodiversity and different,
Mm.
I guess, different lifestyles, different backgrounds. I think that's I guess, spoken a lot more about from an earlier age than
Yeah.
certainly it was when I was at primary school.
Yeah, it's just almost like encourage like authenticity, which sometimes growing up you can't fully be in your like authentic self like you would when you were like in those really small early on years where you're complete yourself, you're unfiltered, you're not influenced by people around you and things. So as you
Yeah.
grow up, you do become a bit more coated in that sort of societal expectations or someone's judgment, and then you start going, wait, I want to be me, but it's not quite right. And it's navigating all of those things. And do you know what? It still continues as we grow up in as individuals in workplaces. We still have people pleasers in workplaces. We still have those people that are more critical towards people or take criticism or feedback differently. Like we're all adult children, really, if you think about it. And I often find some of my people pleasing habits have led me to the careers I have in helping people and wanting to almost like support people in a way that maybe I didn't always get the support. Do you feel like your career journey and like going down the HR route of being like human related has navigated that? And how was your journey in HR? Now, what did you enjoy about it?
Yeah, I loved my career in HR, and I think, I guess what did I most enjoy about it is that, I guess you could probably say it about all, function, but, it's that space that does touch, all parts of the organization. And at the end of the day, we work isn't separate to our lives. It is a
Mm.
big, whether you're self-employed, whether you're employed, part-time, full-time, it is a big part of our life and, our identity and, our well-being. And I
Mm.
think, you can have times where you're, working, with a great manager and a great team, with great people around you. You're doing exciting things, you're, progressing. And in that, I think, builds your self-esteem, your confidence,
Mm.
you're probably naturally looking after yourself better. And, it's sort of that, a positive, virtuous wheel. But then equally, we know as well that the impact that when, things aren't in a good place, at work, how that can negatively impact us and our well-being, and how we're taking care of ourselves. So yeah, I really enjoyed so my early years of HR was in sort of, what we call, or generalist HR space, which I loved, because you're sort of then a bit of all things, and you've got your
Mm.
sort of client group, so you get that like nurturing piece. And then one minute you're having, talent review discussions, the next there's like, oh my goodness, someone's raised a grievance, the next someone's resigned, the next, and then you're working on a new development program.
Mm.
I did love that, I guess, that true partnering, that, the business partnering. And I remember in career discussions being like, oh, I'm never do specialists. Like, I love generalists. And yeah, it was actually after I had children and was looking for something part-time. As you'll know, business partnering is very reactive, and also this was 10 or so years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago now. So I moved into sort of what started sort of culture and engagement, and then sort of learning and development, and leadership development. And yeah, and then what I loved was, actually, I was like, oh, hang on a minute, I still get to be in the people space, but working on all the really great stuff that people love, that is their growth, their development. They're not, oh, we've now got to put 100 people at risk of redundant, all that re- um more challenging for everyone side of HR. So yes, I then spent the last probably 10 years of my HR career, probably maybe slightly
Mm.
less, maybe 8, in sort of that L&D leadership space.
I love it. The learning and development side is almost like you get to nurture these people. You see them start off and then you like work with them to build and you kind of navigate them a little bit and then you see them change and you're like, wow, I've been part of your journey and that's the exciting part to see. I think it's great. And it's so nice that you had that pivot and that's something you started to really enjoy and had a look at, because like, a lot of people sort of make small pivots and go, actually, I really enjoy this side of it. And people looking to step into HR, they might not realize that that's some of the moves you can make and explore and things like that. And I think, don't know why, learning and development, that aspect of it really does suit you. When I think about it now and all the conversations I've had, it's just nurturing, isn't it? And it's similar to the business of kindness for success that you're doing. Did you ever experience, I know I have, like toxic work environment and culture? And what was that experience like for you? What made it toxic, in your experience in particular?
Yes, I have. So I guess I've been fortunate enough that the majority of my career has been in great cultures. Now, that's not to say they were easy, and anything. So not.
Mm.
But there was, I guess, there was a real sense of, actually, this is where we're all heading towards. We all believe in sort of like the direction of where the business is going. And yes, we may have um, interesting conversations and challenging debate around how the best way to get there. But ultimately, we always got there. And as I said, it might be that, yeah, you'd have some uncomfortable conversations, but it was, very much adult to adult, respectful, all of those things. And then
Mm.
I did experience, it was in a different industry, um, to the one that I had used to be working, different to one I'd been working in for most of my HR career.
Mm.
And I knew, I guess, early on that it wasn't going to be my forever. home, which was totally fine. And I remember being in my first fortnight, it must have been, and hearing the COO of the company in his like boardroom or whatever with his leadership team and
Mm.
absolutely ripping them to shreds, like, you know,
Oh.
shouting, swearing. I can remember being really shocked. And as I think back now, what was sort of more shocking was that, you know, it was sort of that, you know, it's not like everyone was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And, you know, there was a few jokes about soundproofing not being great. But yeah, that, you know, it wasn't uncommon.
Mhm.
And I guess that obviously left an impression, you know, so early on. And yeah, it wasn't the first time it wasn't the last time that I heard similar interactions. I didn't have anyone in that, I guess, that seniority speak to me personally like that.
Mm.
But I guess there were other things that I witnessed. And I guess I think what was initially something that I thought like, oh, well, perhaps I can, you know, making a bit of a difference here and actually calling out some of the stuff that, you know, hang on a minute,
Mm.
that isn't in keeping with, you know, the values that you have, or, you know, all of those sorts of things. Or,
Mm.
you know, this isn't how we treat people, or, you know, XYZ, and it being like, well, you know, not in so many words, but well, you know, this isn't the organization for everyone. And, you know, that's sort of how,
Mm.
you know, how it is, which I think, you know, is a shame. Well, it's more than a shame. And I just think no one, no matter how senior or, you know, long in the tooth you are, deserves or should be spoken to in ways that, yeah. So I think yes. And I think the thing with those, when you've got sort of conversations and I guess approaches to things happening in a certain way at the top,
Mm.
it's very difficult, no matter how many great individuals and talent that you've got across the rest of the business. It's very difficult for that to not, you know, not penetrate. Um, so yeah, but I think, you know, like you said, and again with sort of, you know, the bullying that, and you touched upon before as well, I think it's, whilst we know it and at the time it's not nice, but it's through often the less enjoyable periods in life that we, you know, learn the most. And sometimes that isn't about actually discovering something that we love or is a passion. It can be something that we're like, oh, okay, right, that, you know, we can get, I guess, clearer on our boundaries, what we need, what we don't need, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost like, you know, when you work somewhere where the values are so misaligned that it starts making clear actually what yours are. It starts actually reaffirming, well, these are my values, respect and honesty, and, you know, there's no hierarchy. And so it starts actually reaffirming who you are and going, well, these values make me authentic in who I am. And if it's not in alignment with you, then I can't simply be in this environment for too long, because something I've noticed along my journey is when you're working out of alignment with things and people, the anxiety comes back because it's almost like you're pushing
Yeah.
against something that's always something or someone or a structure that's going to challenge you back always. And you feel dismissed, you're not respected. And it's a constant push until finally you go, I have to step away and advocate for something that actually I am passionate about. I feel like I can actually make a difference in the right way. And I think mental health services and the incorporation of mental health in corporate companies has come a long way, 100%. I definitely acknowledge that. But I do feel sometimes they can still do a bit more in that space of supporting staff, reaffirming values, and also checking individuals that are there and their behavior. What's your general opinion about the movement towards mental health support in these sort of companies?
Yeah, I would say not dissimilar to you, Nisha, in that it's come I guess it's made significant progress is the words I'm looking for in, the past. If I think back to when, say, my dad was similar career point to that I am now. However, I feel that it's it's obviously not enough. And I think, yes, whilst it's been big leaps forward, I think it's because we were so far behind. Do you know what I mean? So it's, whilst we've come a long way, yeah, there's a long way to go. And I think, there's a lot of positives in that, um, y- you know, the role of, having qualified mental health first aiders, the fact that, there's, most organizations now have, an employee assistance program.
Mm.
They'll sort of recognize, peak, whether it's, time to talk day or, you know, um, mental health day, all of those sorts of things, which is great. And I think I'm always for, I know sometimes is like, oh, it's not only a day and it's not only a week. No, it isn't.
Mm.
And that's what we need to move away from. But until that point, actually, anything that we can do to drive more awareness, towards the better. I feel that where we, when I say we, sort of societal wise, is need to get deeper into is how we're equipping line managers in supporting individuals with mental health. I think, both, I guess, for themselves, because, particularly if you're, an individual that is, overseeing a team, and care about, the different individuals and the needs, that in itself can bring about, Nisha seems a bit off, or like, oh, Kim's like, and so if things aren't, if there's sort of bumps in the road with the team, as there always is, at some point, or they're going through difficult things, then it's okay, well, how are we supporting them and their resilience,
Mm.
their own mental health, but also how are we equipping them to have to, spot symptoms, to have conversations, to know when to, potentially escalate if, if it's needed. And I guess probably more autonomy um, on how to best support individuals in individual times, because I know from
Mm.
my times and my years working in HR, so often, and I get it from when I've been a line manager myself, but line managers are so not wanting to do the wrong thing,
Mm.
that they either don't. It's best to all just not do anything, or be like, right, is there a policy? Okay, right, I'm just going to follow that policy to the letter of the law, because then I feel, um, I feel sort of safe in that space. So it's
Mm.
difficult. And I think, line managers as well, they're not there to be people's therapists, or, counselors, or but I think, they do, there is that sort of, if we're wanting to get the best out of people, then to me it's that you need to be fostering relationships where there is that real trust and safety, where, yeah, sometimes it might be that they're a bit of a sounding board, um and it's, yeah, it's, as I say, it's tough. But I think that's where, we've moved on. We've got awareness things, we've got policies in place, we've got mental health first aiders, we've got EAPs, but actually, how, if we did a straw poll of how comfortable, line managers are, I don't, they have so much training on, how to write and assess objectives, or how
Mm.
to, have a career conversation. And yes, absolutely, all of these things. But, there needs to be stronger, I think, foundations for them in place. Anyway, I've gone off on a massive,
No,
a massive
it's so true,
there.
because I often find like sometimes people go too far left in terms of logic and things being broken down into we've got this, and this. But sometimes basic things like curiosity and empathy, and this is what I talk about a lot when it comes to mental health in general, how to build genuine connections. Curiosity and empathy. Can you ask genuine questions about someone? You don't need full on training to be able to ask questions, right? We have AI now. If you're really stuck, that can help you use it to your advantage, but also be around like people or even children. Sometimes they are so curious and they can teach you as well little things to ask people to just have awareness of the person right in front of you. Then you can have awareness of how to support them and what they might need, or you start observing like their behaviors as well. And I think sometimes the training that in corporate companies, from my experience in particular, it's always set in stone, and this. But it's away from the EQ sometimes and general compassion. And I think that needs to be taught more. And so the work that I'm doing with the workshops and creating these spaces is actually going back to basics as if for a child and asking these questions. How are you? Someone answers, no, how are you really? And asking follow-up questions. And they don't have to be big. The smallest questions can make a big impact. And I think that sometimes is what these corporate companies or people where there's hierarchy are lacking, is because everything's driven by something that you have tangible evidence for or a policy. Actually, you could be a mental health first aider, but if you're unable to ask these kind of questions and build connection, what's the point in you being a first aider? You can't go, okay, well, this doesn't match this, so this might not. It you have to use your
Yeah.
intuition a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's something that I'm really passionate about. Curiosity and empathy is the best way to get the best out of people. Did you find like during those periods in those toxic environments and around misaligned people and the way they were working impacted your anxiety? Did you feel like it was almost like heightened again? And if it were, and you were experiencing anxiety, how did you navigate that? Did you have anxiety attacks? Was it to that level? And if it were, what were some of the symptoms and signs that you started going, no, this is not great anxiety that I'm experiencing? What was that like?
Yeah, I think so. In answer to the question, yes, it did impact my mental health. And yes, my anxiety was, I guess, far closer to the surface, shall we say, than it had been in years and years.
Mm,
Because it had been so long, and because I've been, I guess, sort of managing it, I've shared before, and I'm very open with that. Part of how I, um, manage myself and my anxiety is medication. Another big part of it is running,
mm,
talking. There's different things, isn't there, that work for different people. But because I guess it had been so long since I'd had a big flare up, shall we say, I didn't really notice it. And as I look back now, I think like, well, how did I not notice it? Because I guess how was it showing up? I guess I felt sick, going into work because I felt, well, I didn't know what was in store for me. I was exhausted because I wasn't sleeping. I guess my confidence was just really low, the whole, feeling like gonna be found out, the whole sort of, imposter syndrome feeling.
mm,
I would then feel like I wasn't being productive. So I would then feel, oh, well, the answer is I need to work into the evenings and the mornings. So I would maybe leave and get back for pickup or whatever it was. At the time, but I wasn't really there, and I'd be snapping at the kids. And come the weekends, I was just wanted to sleep really, and just I would cry a lot. I remember, I would withdraw. I didn't want to do anything social, even see my closest friends or speak on the phone. And I'm a very social person. I wasn't eating very well. I was,
mm,
probably drinking more than I should have done. And I remember my husband saying like, you need to you need to leave, you need to resign. And just thinking like, again, sometimes, and anyone that's in it and listening, I would just say it can be, you can just feel like you're trapped and, well, I can't. Um, and yes, there's always, well, I've got bills to pay and I can't just leave a job and with no job going to.
Mm,
But, I was on a road to, well, I was already well down a, pretty dark road. Um, and I did have, I guess, I did have an exit strategy, as it were, um, in place. But as now I see, as fortune would have it, sort of a, blessing in disguise. I was made redundant. And yeah, I sort of, I guess I hit a bit of a wall after that. And, I wasn't very well, physically. I remember we went off on holiday with some friends and I spent like 3 days in bed. Um, and I just didn't know what, there wasn't, I didn't have flu or anything. It was just, but it was, it was my body's way of being like, no, 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 no.
mm,
So yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because you could, and you can probably hear, my voice, my breath, you get when you remember it, it's not it wasn't a nice time. And one of the things I feel is that, I think the kids probably, this was three getting on 4 years ago now. So I think they were probably too young to sort of, remember a lot of um,
mm.
that, which is good, particularly my youngest. But I think it was at that point I thought, no, no. And I guess I started looking at for similar roles to apply for similar roles. Obviously, I was being very fastidious, I guess, in my seeking around culture and things like that. Obviously, you can never really tell until
Mm.
you're fully in there. But even if I was interviewing, applying for roles, my heart just wasn't in it. And I'd always thought that when I was a grown up, in inverted commas, that I would do something on my own, like business wise. And there I was like, oh, well, you're married in your 40s with 2 children. Maybe it's true that we don't ever feel grown up. And I guess it wasn't a huge leap because I'd spent so many years in the people space, but I'd always thought that I would do a coaching qualification, but probably then coach, in house. But
Mm,
I did my transformative life coaching diploma, which was amazing. And as you'll know,
yeah.
you have a lot of coaching yourself as you're going through it. And I yeah, I thought this is what I want to do, and I want to support other women, but working with them before they get to the point sort of that I did, which is what I do now. And I guess it's, I guess I had stopped showing any form of kindness to myself. And as you'll know from sort of the brief conversations we've had before, I talk a lot about self-kindness not being bubble baths. Not that I'm against a bubble bath or a spa day, but there's sort of the practical things, but there's also a whole other side of it, which is around being, which is how we're talking to ourselves, whether we're taking time to recognize how we're feeling, whether we're sitting with those feelings, whether we're sharing those, whether we're, doing sometimes the deep and difficult personal growth work. So yeah, that it's complex, and I feel that we're so great. And I have to say, I'm not saying it's not a simple gender thing, but typically, women are used to giving and giving and giving and giving and giving and showing kindness to so freely
Mm,
to everyone but themselves. Um, so I'm on a mission to yeah, empower women to extend themselves the same kindness that they do to others, because again, I guess this is where the personal experience comes in. I know that when we don't, we can't sustainably show up for those most important to us in the way that we would, the way we would want to. So
I think you've literally come on to what you do in such a beautiful way, because it links so profoundly in terms of your own experience and now what you're able to offer other people. And it's a really good point you made of guiding them and coaching them before they get to the point that you experience. And that's what people forget is actually, if we implement some of these little tools daily, and they don't have to be massive, little small, little incremental things, you will prevent yourself from getting to burnout or that sort of level. I think it's really, again, a kind thing to do to offer that to other people. But you're so right, it starts with you. And how has your like experience or integration with boundaries been? As a woman, as you said, we are overgivers, sometimes very nurturing, put everyone else first. And then you add in the element of people pleasing too. And when I was on my healing journey, boundaries was something I found really difficult because I felt so bad. How has boundary setting been with you? And what would you advise someone who's like, how do I set a boundary? What is that?
yeah. And I think it's one of these things, isn't it? It sounds sometimes like it's one of these people like, oh, boundaries. And we all sort of just expect that we know what we're talking about. And then we're like, oh, has anyone actually ever sat down and thought, well, what are your what are you needing? What's going to work for you? So I think sometimes it's helpful to take some time and think about our own first. And I guess, yeah, for me, I guess like everything with self-kindness, what I say, and you'll know from following me on social media, I am 100% still practicing it, and always will be. I think I'm always, what's important to me is that people know that I don't get it. I can still be very unkind to myself just because and I live and breathe this stuff. I think, but that's what makes me even more, I guess, passionate about, trying to talk more about it, trying to, see the connections with actually when we are showing ourselves kindness in different ways that it has on our mental health, our, how we're supporting others, etc. I think one
Mm.
of the boundaries, to give an example, I was always, and again, it's still practice, but I would always say yes if someone, had said, do you want to go, there's do you want to go to the cinema, or let's go out for dinner, or so even the nice things that in seeing um friends, but I've become, I guess, a lot more um I've become a lot more comfortable with, I guess, instead of doing the initial, oh yeah, 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 no, I'd love to, I will quite easily now say, oh, thanks for the invite. That sounds really nice. I've got quite a lot going on at the moment, so let me come back to you. And then if I look and I'm like, do you know what? It's because it used to be, I remember sometimes, in the weeks, I'd be like, I'm out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then it's the weekend and it's your knackered, where I
Mm.
don't really like to do more than one thing in a weekday. So it has taken time, but and I think as well I would previously always I would say, oh, I can't because my husband's out, or oh, I
Mm.
can't because, I would make an excuse that, white lie, whatever we want to call it.
And
But I will
justify it.
now, yeah, I
Yeah.
will now say, and I know some people say, oh, no is a complete sentence. Absolutely it is. But depending on circumstances, with friends, I would be like, look, no, and I miss you and I really want to see you, but I'm just full on at the moment and I've got a couple of bits in. Do you mind if we catch up in a few months? And most often than not, people are like, oh God, me too,
Yeah.
So I think we're so, oh no, but oh, what will they think? Oh, they're gonna think I don't like them, or oh, they're gonna think I don't want to see them. And
Mm.
and actually what it does then is it's quite, I think, refreshing, because then people think, oh, yeah, oh, good for, yeah, yeah. Which, and then perhaps next time it might make them, you know, it might make them um question it. But again, even that, there's things I'll be like, oh, why did I say yes? Why did I say yes to that? But yeah, like I say,
That's
it's
just you being human though, isn't
yeah,
it? It's like,
exactly.
no matter how much, you're still human and you're still gonna have setbacks. You're still gonna have days where you say yes when you mean no. And that is perfectly fine. It's not, it's not you've done this coaching and you're doing, work to help clients and that you're completely perfect because there's no such thing. You're also working with them and you're the example that, if you implement some of these and you have almost like give yourself grace to make those errors sometimes and go, whoops, but it's okay because I've got things in place that I can still do better than last time, or it's not having that much of an impact on you that it used to. That's perfectly okay. We don't need to be perfect in everything. And one thing I've learned as well is that having the right people around you who value your nose and value you and don't question it or make you feel bad or anything. They're your people because they actually value you as a person to go, I respect her and it doesn't make me not like her or not want to hang out with her because when she does, she's giving me 100% or 90%, it's not like 10% because you've said
Yeah,
yes, yes, yes.
yeah.
So I think that's the most important thing. Talk to me about some of the work that you're doing. What have you got coming up? And talk to me about this Mind live stream that you did. And I know you're sort of organizing and getting ready for the next one. I'm really excited to
Yeah.
hear about this.
Yes. So, well, I am showing myself at the moment, Nisha. This is a classic. Well, no, it's not classic, but it's an act of self kindness to me that would maybe seem a bit bizarre to some people. But as we touched upon just before we were joining the call, I pitched to Simon Squibb's one of his Doorbell of Dreams. If people don't know Simon Squibb, he's got a book called What's Your Dream, and he's I guess a serial entrepreneur and investor in entrepreneurs, and he invites people from a few in the country to go to a doorbell, and you've got like basically 60 seconds to pitch your sort of dream, whatever. And there was they were asking people on International Women's Day to go and do that. So I went and pitched to the doorbell wearing a shower cap because I was making the point that self-kindness isn't about bubble baths. And I won, which is, no, thank you. When we jumped on the call, Nisha was like, yeah, well done. I mean, it's been amazing. And I guess what I pitched, because it was all around, empowering women to give to themselves so everyone can gain. So this whole, we need to extend ourselves kindness. And then I've got, you won't be able to see it because it's going to be back to front on the thing, but I've got, I developed this self-kindness matrix that's looks at the way, sort of the time and the way. So self-kindness shows up to 6 different sort of ways. Anyway, I guess what is the self-kindness? The self-kindness. So obviously I was at pickup and I got a Instagram ping like, Simon Squibb has tagged, you're like, what? And it was like, what? And I'm like, and then my stuff's coming out showing me as like, and I'm like, what? And then, it was that I said to my husband, I was like, oh my goodness, I couldn't be famous because it was, I was like, and you like all new followers and people messaging, people like blah, blah. You're like, oh my God, amazing,
Exciting.
amazing. And lots of, highs. And it got picked up by the press and, all of, amazing. And then because I was up in Birmingham talking about self-kindness at a health and wellbeing conference meeting, people, because self-kindness is a pillar of well-being. And and then in the last few days, I have just sort of hit a wall, as it were, and just felt very, oh my goodness, like overwhelmed.
Mm,
And then again, I realized that I need to practice what I preach, and I need to do a bit of that, the macro, sort of midi macro being. So actually sort of coming back and being like, okay, pause. What does this mean?
mm,
Does it change? What does it not change? Just take a pause rather than reactive. Oh my goodness. Always, I was shoulding myself a lot, Nisha. I should
mm.
be making the most of it. I should be on socials. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. So I guess I have a group program called the Self-Kindness Accelerator, which I was going to be kicking off again this week, but I have paused it. I've put it on pause
Yeah.
and spoken openly to the people that signed up because I I want to be able to give them my full focus and my full attention. And there's a few pieces going on, one of which is my stream for Mind, which you mentioned. So
Mhm.
yeah, I ran a 15-hour live stream for Mind Mental Health December before last, which represents the 1 in 15 of us that will attempt suicide in our lives. And I had on a variety of speakers over the 15 hours, each either educating us about a way to be kind to ourselves, whether practically or whether, have mindfulness, had tapping, had some individual stories, or just, yeah, so educating or reminding ourselves of ways. So, and we raised £2,000 for Mind. Um, so I'm going to do it again, and it's at the start of World Mental Health Awareness Week, so the 11th and 12th of May, and I'm going to be streaming for 24 hours. Now, again, because going for 24 hours would be quite contradictory to the whole self-kindness and mental health um, piece, I'm doing 18 hours and then a break and then 6 hours. And similar, so I've got number of guests, your good self included, going to be involved. And I guess there's two pillars this time. The first is same as last time. So, ways that we can be kind to ourselves. It isn't about having a bubble bath. And the second is more around the importance of self-kindness within workplaces. So, as a well-being pillar. So that is
Wow.
going to be my focus for the next few weeks. So people can, I guess, follow me on the usual socials. So kindness for success, kindness dot for FOR dot success on Instagram. And then I've got a landing page where I'll be building all of the, I guess, updates on my speakers that I'm going to start releasing soon. And then I guess for anyone in the meantime that just wants to connect with me, I have my sort of discovery call is called a kindness Kickstarter that's complimentary, and I'm building off the back actually of the doorbell. I'm building a sort of diagnostic behind my matrix that I've sort of already got and had in a clunky Excel fashion, but that will be something that's available to people as well.
I love that. We love a master tracker at some point, don't we? Utilize those skills that we used to
Absolutely, we do.
use. I think it's fantastic. And I think all the work that you're doing is incredible and it's so invaluable to people. And I will be putting in your social media handles in the description box. I'll be tagging you and in the episode as well. So people can come and connect with you, find out more about what you do. But
Amazing.
I just wanted to say thank you. You've been an absolute pleasure to have on. Your journey's been insanely inspiring and profound, and I think the work that you're doing is going to go far, and just don't give up. But it just makes you authentic and credible in what you do. You're real and I love it. So thank you so much for coming on
Thank
today.
you.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And again, all the work that you're doing, just brilliant and so needed.
Thank you. I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.